What is up, fellow nerds, and welcome back to the Dapper Snapper Gaming channel, and welcome back to How Do I Want to Do This. This is our series where we take a look at all playable options available to players in Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, then we rank them on a scale of 1 to 10 and either build them or fix them depending on how they rank. Now today we begin our final subclass discussion of the Paladin, and I am very excited to do so on that. The Oath of the Watchers Paladin, you already are aware because you clicked on the video, is one of our newest introductions to the game, and I think it's really interesting in what it chooses to focus on in the Paladin kit. But is it effective? We're gonna have to find that out today. Before we do that though, make sure to leave a like on the video and subscribe if you haven't already. As you can see, most people who watch the channel are not subscribed, so please don't be one of those people. Help us to reach our goal of 5,000 by the end of this year. I think we can do it, but of course I need your help in order to get there. Then of course share the video with your friends and click the bell so you're notified when new videos are uploaded. Just a quick reminder, I've said this in my past couple of videos, but as of today, it's very likely that my first child has actually been born. If we made it through last week, which I'm having to pre-record these, so I'm not sure, but if we made it through last week, then we went in for being induced this past weekend. So we likely have already had that happen. So thank you all so much for your support in the comments. Thank you all so much for being there and being so understanding. It's a crazy time for me right now. It has been for the past few months, and I'm sure it's going to be even crazier throughout the next forever. But I am very thankful for all of you who have been showing your support for me, and I'm looking forward to taking a little bit of a break from the channel, but obviously my focus is going to be very much shifted, and then we will be back with Ranger pretty shortly after that. So with all that out of the way, let's go ahead and jump into today's ranking. So the Oath of the Watchers Paladin, what's the deal with them? What's the point, right? Oath of the Watchers is an interesting thing that it reminds me a lot of like the Horizon Walker Ranger, which again, we haven't talked about on the channel yet, but those that seek to look at otherworldly threats, otherworldly beings, and protect your realm, right? You're basically an Avenger, essentially. And it's funny because the Watchers is kind of a character that Stan Lee actually played in one of the Avengers movies, which is pretty interesting as well. But basically you are there to protect the world from otherworldly threats. Obviously you're going to have to get some buy-in from your DM on this, otherwise you're going to feel kind of stupid if all of your enemies are just of this realm, right? So definitely talk to your DM before playing something like this so that you can actually feel like taking this oath meant something. So that's just something to talk about for me, but I think it's pretty interesting. But is it any good? Let's find out. Starting off, as always, we have our expanded spell list, and so here that is on the screen. Some interesting options here. We get Moonbeam, which isn't too bad. We get Counterspell, which is really good. Banishment, Hold Monster, and again, Scrying. We talked about Scrying a lot last week when we talked about Oath of Vengeance. But there's some interesting options here, right? I'm not so crazy about this list. It's not bad by any means, but there are some things that I think are problematic, right? Alarm and Detect Magic are fine, but we can't cast them as rituals, at least inherently as a paladin. We would have to multi-class in order to get ritual casting, or we'd have to take the feat in order to get there. So that's kind of a bummer. I don't want to use a spell slot to cast Alarm, even though it's a good spell. Yeah, that's just me. Moonbeam is fine, but it takes an action to move it around afterwards, which kind of sucks. I would have loved to have had something like Spiritual Weapon instead. That would have been a lot better and gotten roughly the same thing done. See Invisibility makes sense here. It's not the worst thing in the world. Counterspell, one of the best spells out there, so that's really good. Non-detection, okay, all right. Aura of Purity and Banishment are kind of redundant here. Hold Monster is good, and Scrying, I don't know if I want to wait until this level to get something like Scrying, although when it comes to flavor, Scrying makes perfect sense here as well. So I don't know. I think that it could have been a little bit better, but I don't think it's bad either. It's definitely got some really good standouts on there for sure. So overall, I'm going to give this a 7 out of 10. I think there are some others that could have been better, but I also would not say that this is a trash or bad list at all. I think we've got some really good standouts here as well. Also at level 3, we get Channel Divinity, and just like every other paladin before, we get 2 unique options to this subclass. The first is going to be called Watcher's Will, and this is a really cool support / utility feature. With this as an action, we can choose a number of creatures within 30 feet of us equal to our charisma modifier, and for the next minute, those creatures have advantage on wisdom, intelligence, and charisma saving throws. Then we also get Abjure the Extraplanar. This is essentially Turn the Undead, except it only works on aberrations, celestials, elementals, fays, or fiends. Besides that, it is the same kind of feature where they make a save or else they must run the other direction, or at the very least, they cannot approach you. These features are interesting, and I've seen some people online as I do research for these videos that don't really like this, and I see people who do like them. I see people who think that they're a little too specific and too pigeonholed, and I want to kind of address that. First of all, being able to protect your allies against mental saving throws is huge, right? I don't think that that can be understated. And it's not even just against your sucker save spells, right? It's not even just your banishments, your polymorphs, things like that. It's also just inherent features of powerful creatures, right? There are tons of features that when they hit with an attack, there's a saving throw, or else they're frightened or they're charmed or whatever. There are so many features like that, especially when you're fighting things like fays and fiends, that can be really, really nasty. And this gives advantage. That's kind of huge, right? So I think that this is entirely applicable to a lot of different situations, not just enemy spellcasters. You're going to see this a lot, I would imagine. And then Abjure the Extraplanar, Turn the Undead, but not undead. This gives us a lot more options than just undead. Now, obviously, you're not going to run into this every day, but there's enough categories here to where I'm thinking this is going to come up at least somewhat often, right? When I'm looking at a group of, I don't know, demonic entities that have a bunch of little guys around them, you could send them scattering. Is that what I would prefer? Probably not. But this gives you the ability to turn a bunch of different little guys and get them out of there. And that can be kind of huge depending on what you're fighting. Of course, again, this is going to have more merit in a campaign where you're fighting extraplanar type of things, which is why I said talk to your DM. But even when you're not, there are plenty of creatures that fall into one of these 5 categories that you will fight on a somewhat regular basis, no matter what. And so I think that it is applicable there as well. Overall, I think these are really good, and I really don't see all the negativity that goes around it. I think that they're both quite nice. I'm going to give this an 8 out of 10. I think it's pretty good. Are there ways that it can be improved? Sure. But I think that Watcher's Will is a little bit stronger. And I will say that if you're going in like a boss fight or something that is a creature that you think probably will force some saving throws like this, even if there are little guys, even if you have the ability to send them running, I probably would use Watcher's Will over Abjure the Extraplanar. But in normal fights where you're fighting like 5-6 bad guys who fall into this, then that's when I would use it. But for the most part, I'd probably use Watcher's Will. I think you're going to get more use out of that than the Abjure. Next up at level 7, we get Aura of the Sentinel, and this is very simple. Whenever ourselves, of course, or anyone is within 10 feet of us, they get a bonus to their initiative equal to our proficiency bonus. And of course, at level 18, this will go out to 30 feet. I don't think that this can be understated here, that this is really good, right? We oftentimes have to dump our dexterity modifier as a paladin because we need strength to be able to hit hard. We need charisma for our spells. We need constitution in order to have halfway decent HP. We don't want our wisdom to be trash because wisdom saving throws are a thing. And so then it basically comes down to dexterity and intelligence being our last 2. this allows you to still have a decent bonus to it, and it scales decently, right? You know, most paladins that I build here on the channel have a +0 to their initiative. And so this gives you a nice boost. So you and your party can be going first in combat for a good chunk of the time. And that's really good. I think that this is really good, and I think that it doesn't get enough credit. I think it's a 9 out of 10. I think it's a really good aura. It's free bonuses to initiative, and it's going to really help out if you have something like a certain ranger that likes going first in the initiative, or going before someone has moved in that combat. There are definitely some really cool ways that this can combo with some other things that are out there. Level 15, we get Vigilant Rebuke, and so this gives us a feature that ties directly back to our Watcher's Will option back when we were talking about our channel Divinity. So with this, whenever a creature within 30 feet of us passes on an Intelligence, Wisdom, or Charisma saving throw, we can use our reaction to deal 2d8 plus our Charisma modifier in force damage to the creature that caused them to make that saving throw. This is pretty awesome, right? And so here's the thing, it's not that much damage. 2d8 plus charisma modifier at level 15 isn't that impressive, and it does also cost us our reaction. However, this is essentially an opportunity attack for free, right, that we don't have to even be within melee range for. And this is still another way to help out your allies, right? Somebody comes up, forces them to make a save, you can deal a little bit of extra damage to kind of nickel and dime that. And like I said, it's kind of free because we've already given a huge boost for our allies in their Intelligence, Wisdom, and Charisma saving throws. So their likelihood of succeeding is much higher than it normally would be. So for that reason, I think this is actually pretty good. I think it's actually pretty nice. Is it the best? No. Could the damage have been better? Sure. But I still think extra damage is extra damage, especially since it's force damage. That's also really good. So I've got to give this an 8 out of 10. I think overall it's actually quite good, and just reinforces the ability to knock out those creatures that are coming out of the woodworks to try to hurt your allies. Finally, at level 20, we get Mortal Bulwark, and this is yet another one of those OP crazy abilities, but again, it's level 20, so what do you want? So for this, as a bonus action, we can activate this for 1 minute, and we get 3 different features. We gain True Sight out to a range of 120 feet. We have advantage on attack rolls against aberrations, celestials, elementals, fae, and fiends. And whenever we hit a creature with an attack roll and deal damage, we can also force it to make a charisma saving throw. If it fails, then it is magically banished to whatever plane of existence is its native one. And then on a successful save, it of course cannot be banished again until 24 hours have passed. Once we do this, of course, we can't do it again until we finish a long rest, or we can actually use a 5th level spell slot in order to do it again. So this is pretty interesting and pretty unique. So we get True Sight out to 120 feet, which is actually insanely good. True Sight is something that's kind of hard to come by when it comes to a playable character. There are plenty of monsters that get it, but playable characters really struggle to get access to something like this. And so this is great, right? This is really, really good. We also have advantage on all of the creatures that we have the ability to abjure with our channel divinity that we talked about. So again, this is something tying back to that. So we could turn them and then pick them off as we go around. We have advantage on all of our attacks against them, which is great. And whenever we deal damage to any creature, we can choose to try to force it back to its native plane, which is really good. It's also a charisma save, which is not going to be the best all the time, so that's also pretty cool. I don't know, this could be a fight ending feature instantly, or at the very least force out a legendary resistance, and that's kind of worth it to me, right? I think that this is really cool. So yeah, you can't try to banish it again for 24 hours, but you also ate up a legendary resistance, and that's kind of huge, right? So you could use this to save on your spell slots and go ahead and force that. You know, there are going to be plenty of other things flying around that I'm sure it's going to want to use its legendary resistance on. This is a big one, and so for that reason, I think it's actually quite good. for all of that together, I think this is a 10 out of 10 capstone ability. I think it's really strong. True Sight is amazing. You have advantage on attacks against a lot of different creatures, especially against things that you'll likely be fighting here at your 20th level. And of course, being able to basically have a banishment on that first attack you hit into somebody, that's also going to be kind of huge. So what do we think overall of this specific Paladin? I think it's actually pretty decent overall. Do I think it's the best Paladin out there? I don't know, but it is really good. I think overall as a kit, it works a lot better than just its parts put together individually. So that's one thing to consider. I do think the sum is better than just looking at them individually here. So looking at the spell list, the spell list is okay. The Channel Divinity options are really good in my opinion. Or of the Sentinel works well, and then Vigilant Rebuke and Mortal Bulwark both call back to your Channel Divinity options. So, I mean, as a cohesive kit, I think it's actually quite nice, and I think it's actually pretty good. I think it's going to be a lot more applicable to regular situations than one might originally think, and I don't think that it's quite as pigeonholed as what a lot of people make it out to be. So for that reason, I've got to be thinking about how good this thing is. I don't think I can go any less than an 8. I don't think it's as good as Vengeance, like what we talked about last week. But I do think that it's pretty close. I think I've got to give this a 9 out of 10 overall. I think it's really good. I think that it has a couple of things that could be improved for sure, but overall, adding all of it together in one kit, I think it pushes it over the edge from 8 to 9, and I think it's going to be a lot of fun to play one of these. So what do you think? Let me know down in the comments below if you think I went too far with this, if you think it should be the 10 out of 10 up there. Let me know. And of course, here is a list of all of my Paladin rankings that I went throughout this series. And of course, let me know in the comments what you think about those as well. You think that there need to be any adjustments made? You think that I'm wildly out of line in something? I would love to know your thoughts on that. Of course, later this week, we're going to be building one, and it's going to be our final Paladin subclass build, at least for the normal stuff in this guide here. So until then, stay safe out there, stay healthy. We'll see you later. Bye-bye.